Thank you very much. And let me start specifically by thanking Mr. Sanderson for inviting me to talk with you today. And let me also start by thanking Richard Greenwood, Sarah Surier, Janet Boleto for their assistance in facilitating my visit. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I especially appreciate it because I think it's absolutely vital for historians and preservationists to share their approaches to the past. I'll come back to this point at the end of my talk, but I want to offer this acknowledgement in the form of a confession, not inappropriate, concerning how much historians can miss by ignoring the physical reality, the thingness of earlier times. Many years ago, when I was a graduate student writing a dissertation about antebellum industrialization in rural southern Massachusetts, I took some college undergraduates to a nearby history museum focusing on the New England textile manufacturing. In a corner of one room, we came upon a live demonstration of a spinning wheel. No big deal, you're thinking, except that I'd never before actually seen a spinning wheel in operation. So there I stood, having written, I thought, quite knowledgeably about the production of cotton yarn before the coming of mills, finally comprehending what a spinning wheel actually does. And before I could stop myself, and to the great embarrassment of students standing nearby, I heard myself saying in a very loud voice, "Oh, now I get it. It spins the cotton. Who knew?" I returned home and rewrote certain pages of my thesis, but the larger lesson, the lesson that the past historians write about, is never not something that has been concretely inhabited by people of the past. Excuse me. The lesson that before they enter scholarly analysis, spinning mills, and for that matter, factory buildings as well, were directly experienced by contemporaries, and that such experiences are part of what historians should ponder. This lesson I have sought to keep in mind, and it's a lesson preservationists surely help teach. For teaching that lesson is also surely how preservation works. Thus my opening confession. I will, as I say, return later to some thoughts on connections between historians and preservationists. But now let me turn to what I hope and suspect Mr. Sanderson hoped I'd provide when he issued his invitation. Not a story of personal epiphanies, but an historian's perspective on early industrialization in New England, and more specifically on industrialization in southern New England communities like West Warwick, and like those spread throughout the Patuxent Valley and beyond, from the late 18th century to about mid-century, mid-19th century. First, some background considerations. I'm using the term industrialization rather than industrial revolution to stress that what happened was not some one-off event, but an evolving process. And I'm further underscoring the breadth of what happened by calling it the Great Transformation, a rubric I'm invoking to signal industrialization's extensive cultural, political, and economic ramifications. Still, for all its reach, industrialization is not everything. For my purposes, the marrow of industrialization, the core phenomenon as distinct from its consequences, involved a shift in manufacturing, in the making of goods. More specifically, it involved markedly accelerating divisions of labor, by which the fabrication of products was increasingly chopped into subtasks, often allotted to relatively unskilled workers, with the result that more goods could be produced more cheaply. Responding in some cases to rising consumer demand, and in all cases to mounting quest for profits, industrialization reflected and contributed to a stiffening capitalist grip over America's political economy. At the same time, industrial manufacture contrasted to artisanal or handicraft production, by which individual items were fashioned as a whole from start to finish by labor schooled to undergo the skills of that trade. Of course, the line between handicraft and industrial production is not always clear, but nonetheless, construing industrialization in this manner, I think, allows us to recognize a process that gained traction throughout the United States, especially in the North, from the Revolution to the Civil War. It also allows us to realize industrialization took different forms. It might involve large, it might involve large centralized manufacturers, sometimes called factories, or small shops. It might involve combination of central workplaces and outworkers working in satellite workplaces, including their homes. It might unfold with or without new technology. It could emerge in urban settings like New York, which hosted relatively unmechanized but meticulously subdivided ready-made clothing businesses. And, of course, it could emerge in the northern countryside, which in these years hummed with the industrial production of clocks and palm leaf hats, shoes and furniture, books and buttons, and also, of course, with the production of textiles. Because if the textile manufactories springing up in these years demonstrated their industrial credentials with intricate divisions of labor, they likewise represented a form of industrialization that often did depend on machines, and often on machines driven by the water power supplied by streams crisscrossing the northeastern countryside. Country textile mills were in fact the dominant face of industrialization in southern New England, and hence a key to the great transformation